Hello there. Welcome to another edition of In Between the Pages with James Lott Jr. I am James Lott Jr. And of course, a lot of us are at home. And as I've been doing, I've been talking to my friends who have projects and things and seeing how they're doing and what they did and what you should be watching. And that's what this show is about. And this is a guest of mine that I like. He's a friend of mine. He's an actor, producer, director. He has a movie out called High and Outside that we're going to talk about. You should be watching it. I'm going to tell you where to find it and how you should watch it. My friend, Phil Donlon. How are you?
James, it's great to see you.
You look good.
Thank you. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. So do you. It's really weird to be doing this interview in my bed, but it's cool.
I know in my bedroom, my keyboard is back here, my microphone.
Yeah.
I got whole studio set up, ring light over here. I'm just like working it all out.
That's kind of what I think is cool about a lot of these interviews that are happening, from everybody's homes, is that you get to check everyone's house out. You're like, oh, let's see what's James got back there.
Well, look, see, I got some good stuff. I make sure all the bad things. Bad things. No, just kidding. But people tell me you like my. I tell them this stuff back here actually is all African American artwork.
Oh,
that
wow.
was from the early years of these artists, like they're called Pamela Robinson, Annie Lee, Charles Bibbs. There are people. These were bought where they have the numbers on them, like they really are. They're worth a little something. Yeah. But they're early works. They're early works, and so I have them on my walls, and I love them.
Wow. Okay.
It's kind of like a nice thing to have.
I dig it. Yeah, I was trying to figure out like all morning, like where am I going to do this? I was in the living room, I was in the bedroom, and I was in the kitchen.
Good spot.
It's casual, but yet at the same time, it's completely set up.
Well, it's all about lighting. We had to find our lighting. You have good lighting going on right now. That's what it's about.
Yeah, that's totally what it's about. Yeah, for sure. So,
we want to see you. We want you washed out. We want to see you.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You know how that goes. You make films about this.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's cool to be able to do this kind of stuff. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to be able to still connect and we'll find out if this is going to sort of be at least for a little bit our temporary future, which it might be. This might be the thing we're doing for a while, so we might as well get used to it.
I was going to ask you about that because I feel we're both creators and we're performers. We're both. But I'm feeling like I'm watching people really get creative, and they're using the resources like IG Live, like Zoom, GoToMeeting, for other purposes that they didn't normally use it for. Do you wonder if it's going to really affect how we do things now? You think it'll be added on to our usual?
Well, I do. I think right now more than ever, I don't think movie theaters are going to come back from this, to be honest, because even if, let's say, July or August, they all of a sudden say, all right, everyone, you can go outside. Who's going to go buy a movie ticket and go sit in a movie theater in the dark next to a bunch of people they don't know, and someone's going and cut? It's not going to happen. So I think large, sort of what you're saying there on a larger note, I think streaming and using our phones and our computers, I really think, streaming was already a thing, but I think it's going to take hold now because of this in a way that we never saw before. So yeah, I think phones and Zoom, I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years Zoom is the next Netflix. People will be like, yeah, it started out as a way to do meetings, and now it's like making movies. I wouldn't be surprised, because all Netflix was, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, was you just got some DVDs in the mail. And their selection wasn't even that great.
Not even 10 years ago. You think about, I remember I came back to 11 years ago. I would say at least even as soon as 9 years ago, 7 years ago, it was just literally, you get a DVD in the mail, you send it back.
Right.
On Amazon, we forget that was books.
Yeah.
First.
That was it.
Now you can watch things on Amazon. Our microwaves are going to have stuff at some point. You're going to start showing stuff. It's really interesting. And you bring up a really evocative point about how this could be the new way now. Remember when phones first started? I think it was that one movie, Tangerine, did the whole thing on iPhone. They did a whole movie on iPhone. It's oh, that's crazy. That's amazing. Yeah. This could be it too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, it's really gonna be interesting. But I do think that this is the way it's gonna be, and I think especially what you're doing. Before we came on, we were talking for a few minutes, and like you were saying, hey, I'm just going to kind of continue my show as usual. But this might lead you to something that you can't even foresee right now. You have no idea, because all I can imagine is that this is going to be, it's weird times, and like things are just going to change out of this. I mean, I think it's going to be I highly doubt things are going to go back to the way that they were completely. Some things will, but it's already been an eye opener to people, and I think it will continue to be that. I don't know. I'm no Kreskin, but that's my thoughts.
Well, no, I mean, I actually kind of agree with you. I will be very curious to see how this unfolds. I think sometimes out of tragedy and crisis come great things. Sometimes I look at it that way. I mean, I did a post today about I had some flowers bloom yesterday. I mean, it's kind of like, in sad times things bloom. So that's kind of a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
So we may see some new ways of doing things entertainment wise. And I'm seeing a lot of my friends get creative. That's what's really interesting too. They're getting creative because, as we know, Hollywood just shut down. Broadway shut down. I mean, all the entertainment centers shut down.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of friends on show. I'm sure you do too. A lot of friends on shows. They were in production and they're just shut down indefinitely, and they may not come back. People who were doing like season finales for their shows just ended. They didn't even finish, and they don't have plans to.
No.
So yeah, it's I don't know. It's gonna be crazy.
I have some friends who do soaps, which are on every day, and Only Days of Our Lives is the only one that has enough for the next like 7 months. The others they're going to run out. So then what do you do then? They're going to run out, and that's it. I mean, it's like, okay, we're not going back to work. And that's gonna be it. So that's gonna be a section of programming. Just think about that. Section of programming is gonna just be like done.
Yep, absolutely.
And also,
go ahead. Okay. Well, no, you bring up a good point. I mean, I think content is gonna be king very soon. So, however you're producing it and putting it out. I mean, I even think I've started to see a few film festivals that have started to pop up, like shoot a minute-long thing on your iPhone. I know that casting offices are doing these things where they're seeing everyone and anyone, just put a monologue on tape and send it in, and they're doing just generals. They're trying to find new talent. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, stuff's nuts.
It is. And I just did 2, not self-tapes, but I did 2 Skype interviews. But a couple of places, a couple of networks. Oh, but they have time now. They're just, we're all at home. And now we have time to actually go through and look at. So tell people, the world hasn't really stopped. It's stopped in some ways.
Right.
But in other ways, it's still moving right along.
Right.
Not the way we fully think, but it's like they're looking for people. They're watching you out there. I think there are eyes out there watching you.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt about it.
What you're doing. Now, you have a film called Hiding Outside at Base Bar New Orleans out. And it's on Amazon, correct?
It's on Amazon, and it's also on demand.
Oh, and on demand, too.
Yeah, you can find it in both places. Yeah.
Perfect. So tell folks about the movie.
Well, it's a baseball movie. So for those
sports,
who, so we don't have a baseball season right now. So a lot of people I've noticed, they're doing they're watching. And I'll see it on social media. People are like, oh, I miss baseball, and they're watching like Bull Durham and The Natural. They're watching old baseball game. People are getting really like
all these things. Yes, all these things. Yes,
they're getting very sentimental over the fact that there's no baseball season. Which I get. I'm the same way. I love the game, and I'm sad it's not there. So, first thing to say is that if you like baseball, give it a try, because it's a brand new film, and but it's a dark film, so it's not. It's not like a lighthearted, romanticized version of baseball. It's really dark. So basically, it's about a minor league baseball player who's at the end of his career, and everybody's telling him he has to give up his career. He's too old. He's never going to make it, but he doesn't listen to anybody, and he tries against all odds to resurrect his career. That's the short answer. And he lives in the shadows of his father, who was a very famous big league ball player for his time. So that's, sort of is even more like salt in the wound type for this character. But he proceeds to basically wreck his life. So I would say, baseball's the backdrop, but also this is the story of like a lot of minor league guys, because I was around them all when I was doing the movie, when I was doing my research, I was around these guys and they struggle. It's a hard struggle to just even survive in the minors, whether you're
People don't know that. We don't even think about the minors, do we? We don't think about. I mean, it happens to like the farming teams for football and basketball. Like we don't think about the AAA teams and the minors.
Mm-hmm.
We just think, oh, they go on there to get a chance to play and possibly get picked. Like we don't even think much about their lives, do we?
Yeah, totally. And it's a struggle. And these guys have other jobs and things that they do to support themselves, and they're working for very little money. So it's a super struggle, emotionally and physically for these guys. And they have a small window. And this is, the director, his dad was a big league guy. So his dad Tim Johnson, played for the Dodgers, the Brewers, and the Expos. And then he gave up. So it was like, I think that sort of early 80s, he retired. And then he went into coaching. And then he managed, he coached, he bench coached for the Boston Red Sox in the late 90s. And then he got a shot to manage the Toronto Blue Jays in the early 90s. And then that's when that team had like Roger Clemens and Jose Canseco. And a very, very young A-Rod. So it was a cool team and they did well. So he lived he watched his dad. His dad started his career over managing in the minors and stuff like that. So the director was around this a lot, got to see a lot of guys go and most not. So this was the reason why I like this film a lot, is because he wanted to make what he saw as what baseball life is really like. And what I learned doing this film, this is an extremely long answer to your question.
Well, I love it.
Ain't nobody going anywhere right now, so we got all the time in the world.
Exactly, we're gonna go. I love the answer. No, please give it to me. You make my job easy. Please give it to me.
But what I learned doing this film was that very little, so for a baseball player, very little of their life is on the field. It's mainly off the field. That's where, 90% or 80%, something of that nature takes, and so that's what he wanted to focus in on. Like when the players come home from the season and all year long, they have their clothes washed for them. They're fed meals. They're told when to be at the ballpark. They have people applauding them all the time. I mean, they're stars. And then they come home and they have to be like fathers or husbands or whatever. Boy, you know what I mean? They're just like, this is weird. It's weird. But I mean, and this is like, that's a lot of guys who play, it could be basketball or hockey or whatever. But specifically for baseball, it's a really long season. If you include spring training, it's a long time that they're out of the house and on the road. So so it's a really great, it's a really, really wonderful look at the struggle, of what a guy goes through to try to make it to the big leagues. So if you're looking for something, and it's very docudrama style, it's very fly on the wall.
Yeah.
The cast is really, really fantastic. Very great cast. Very honored to have been included in this cast. So, so it's a great. So that's pretty much the long and short of the film.
And what it brings up for me is that it just reminds me of how many folks actually make it to the majors, because it's one of those things where, because there are a lot of teams, there are a lot of baseball teams all over the country and everything, and they pick some of these players from other countries, from the Caribbean, They bring them over. So they have a culture shock thing. They're having a new world thing.
Yeah.
To be playing in the minor leagues, playing your heart out, doing the stuff in hopes that you'll get picked and get promoted to a major league team. Knowing that there's a million other minor league teams just like you out there doing the exact same thing, and only a few really make it.
Right.
It must be emotionally a trip.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's hard. It's hard. I think I can only imagine it's hard to watch guys you're playing with today be gone tomorrow, and you're still stuck where you're stuck. It's got to be a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And why him and not me?
Right.
It was interesting. I heard, I think Tim Johnson said this to me. The best guy, or the worst guy playing in Major League Baseball. So the guy that you consider, like when you watch the game, you're like, oh, this guy sucks, he's a bum, or whatever, is still better than the best guy in AAA. And that's the gap between those guys. There's still a huge, and if you go to a AAA game, even if you go to a AA game, you're watching this and you're going, wow, they're good. And they are. They're like the best from their high school or from their town or whatever. But still to become that like elite guy that's going to get picked and put into the big leagues. And so, and like, this is sort of, for me as an actor, I had to sort of like find a way into this movie. And I had the chance through Tim Johnson, director's father. He set up some really cool meets for me. I've talked a lot about this stuff before, but the one that I loved the most was meeting Roger Clemens and his son, who was like late 20s. And he was my character in the film, not necessarily with all the personal problems my character had in the film that I can't speak to, but the struggle where he's got basically a Hall of Fame if he ever gets in, but certainly a Hall of Fame caliber father that is one of the best pitchers we'll ever see. And he's not gonna, and he's getting all the chances in the world because of his dad, but he doesn't have what it takes. And I hung out with those guys a lot, them too. I hung out with them a bunch, and they really let me in, and it was really cool. And so I based a lot of my stuff on those two and listening to their stories and his struggles personally. I don't think he's playing anymore. I think he's moving into scouting.
Okay.
So that's how tough it is.
And I can relate to that. I can relate to, and that's why you watch this film, you can relate to that. I had a father who was semi-famous in his field. When I first started, I went into that field. It was a healthcare field. And I went into there, and I'm James Lott Jr. And so it's kind of like I share his name, and I'm going to the same field. And it was kind of like, I thought it was a natural progression. And just like going to the same field as my father.
Right.
And it was a little weird at first because I'm not like him. I'm a very different personality than my father is.
Right.
And it was kind of weird for him too, kind of. It was kind of like we were similar in many ways. We talk similarly, and we have that kind of thing. But it was like I suppose my own personality, and it's weird to. Well, I was being a junior anyway, having to live to this guy's name was always weird anyway, on some level. I'm proud of my name, and I go professionally by James Lott Jr. and everything. But now I'm in a different whole world now, so it's very different. But I can relate to that. I can relate to that a little bit. Just kind of going, well, will I be as good as him? And what if I am good as him, but I don't get the opportunity like he had? Like, what if I go as far as he did? And I go, well, I am as good as he is, or I'm even better, but the timing, or it is whatever it is, his name carried him higher. That must be hard for people. Just like, I understand that a little bit. It's kind of like, that's a weird thing because you're not your own person. You want to be your own person, and you're trying to do that, but people are going to hold you to that father, basically.
Right. Totally. Yeah, for sure.
Not fair.
Agreed.
But just how it is.
Right. Absolutely.
So in baseball, what if the son is really, really good? Or what if he isn't? But then just doesn't have the chances. Or what if, different time periods, like too, I think what was good maybe 15 years ago may be different now, right? And especially sports.
Right. Right.
His dad got a good job, got a good gig, and it's a little tougher. Things change. So I think folks can relate to that. If you're somebody
Yeah.
who's in the shadow of somebody, or it could be your mother or father or whatever, you
Right.
watch this movie because you can go, oh, okay, I understand that. You may feel some despair. You may be able to relate when you watch.
Yeah, it's a good, and it's a good father-son film.
Yeah.
Well, which is kind of that's what baseball always is painted as. It's like a father-son sport, but oddly too, one of our biggest audiences that I remember when the film was finished and we were screening it with the director and the producers, and we were kind of frightened that it would be, because I mean, the men in this film are terrible. They're not, I mean, they're pretty bad. And so we were concerned about how it would be received by women. But amazingly, they're like our hugest audience on this film. They love this film. So it's so to say it's a father-son film, it's not to alienate, any audience.
So still go see it. You can be a female, you can be fatherless, whatever. Just go see it. And if you're a father or you're a mother's son or a father, you still can relate to it. That's even better. I mean, any story, that's even better. As an actor, do you like going to those dark places? Do you like, is it darker the better? Kind of so to speak. Do you like that?
Yeah, it's kind of my thing, and I'm not quite sure why.
You just other stuff where you were dark too. I know you just other stuff too that you were dark. So
yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just kind of like the area I like diving into. I feel like the more uncomfortable the territory for me, the more comfortable I am.
He's so nice, folks. Like, he's really a nice person and very warm person. So I mean, that's a good actor. That's somebody who can go to those, play villains, or go to those dark places and fall apart on screen. I mean, I guess that just makes it even better.
And it might be just how I came up as an actor as well. I don't know. It's really weird. I think as a kid, I always liked the darker stuff. I don't know why, but I think I was always drawn to that. Like, I remember as a kid, like, all my friends were into Star Wars, and I thought it was the corniest, stupidest thing I'd ever seen in my life. Even as a kid, I was like, what is this dude, this walking rug, and this guy who looks like he looks like Han Solo looks like a cheap cowboy off of Gunsmoke.
Oh my goodness!
And all the dialogues like, "I am your father." I'm like, what is this corny crap? But even as a kid, I don't think I was ever really conditioned for that, and I have no clue why. But I'll certainly say, when I went to theater school in Chicago, there was a style of theater that was being done at that time, and even previous, like Steppenwolf theater with like Gary Sinise and Malkovich, and they had taken all these Sam Shepard plays to Broadway and stuff like that. There was this sort of sense that, like, that's the kind of stuff you did as an actor. So I know for sure, when I came out of college and all the theater that was, we weren't doing, I'm not a musical theater person, but we certainly weren't trying to do like Our Town. We were like, okay, let's do, Lanford Wilson and Sam Shepard, and let's do David Mamet, let's do the darkest material we can. But that's what everybody was doing. So I don't know. I feel in some ways I was conditioned to that. I love comedy. In the film is an actress who is a real comic genius, Camilla Cleese, who's John Cleese's daughter. And she's, she makes her living doing stand-up. That's her thing right now. And I've gotten together with her to do a few things for Funny or Die. And that's like completely in another realm, but I love that. I get off on that. Like, I think it's fantastic. I did a pilot that never aired when I was in my 20s with John Cryer, and it was a comedy with the guys who did Seinfeld. So I started, I guess my first like training ever was Second City in Chicago.
I always think of comedy in Chicago. I always think of comedic stuff coming out of
And it's
Chicago.
a big scene. I was never into it, but my first experience with performing or acting ever was Second City. And I will say, I completely forgot about this, and only discovered it a few years ago. So I'm back in Chicago. My parents are like, "Hey, could you clean out?" I've got all this stuff in the basement. They don't have an attic, but they have a basement. It's the Midwest. And
Midwest.
so they had all these boxes from high school. Go through this, clean it out, or take it back with you to LA or whatever. And I was cleaning it out, and I found my old syllabus. I had just graduated high school, and I wanted to act, and I didn't know how to do it because I didn't come from a family like that. I came from just a very blue collar family, and I saw somewhere, and I can't remember where, but I saw an advertisement for Second City classes that you could just pay for and be in. And I thought, well, cool, I'm going to do that. So I took like my money that I was, earning at Wendy's, and I spent it on Second City. And my first teacher was Stephen Colbert.
Oh my God.
This is back when he was kicking around Chicago.
Yeah, right.
And I read his bio. So and they were the syllabus. And I was like, well, I'm keeping this because he made the syllabus, and it was like in this folder, and it has his picture in his bio. And it's like talking about like, he just finished like some regional theater tour in Wisconsin or something. This was early Colbert. And I don't quite remember a lot about the classes, but I do remember, but anyway, that was my first acting teacher. Second City was my first experience, ever with getting up on a stage and just trying stuff. And when I was going to theater school, and I was like, okay, well, I really want to be a very serious actor. I had these notions of myself. I want to be like Malkovich, and I want to be like these guys. I want to be a very serious actor. But how I made my rent when I was going to college was I formed an improv troupe with the guys I met in Second City.
Wow.
So a few guys, and we toured colleges and stuff, and did, and we get paid a little money, and that's how I like made my money, and bought pizza and whatever I was eating in college.
Yes, we know back then. Yes, I understand.
But that time, I learned, I think, more than I learned in the 4 years I went to a theater conservatory about performing, that I still use to this day. So anyway, all to say, yes, I love the dark stuff, but weirdly and oddly, I really kind of started with in the improv comedy world. So anyway.
But see, a lot of people, they always say with the comedy part, a lot of comedians do end up doing dark stuff, and they do it well. It must be something about that. I rarely see the reverse. It's usually comedy to drama, not always drama to comedy.
It's true, because all you have to do is look at Robert De Niro, and man, that guy's career went in the toilet. None of his stuff was funny. It was all bad. I don't think anybody liked it. With an exception, maybe here or there, where you're going like, okay, this works.
Right.
But for the most part, you're like, this is terrible. This is like awful.
It's very few. Meryl Streep's the only one I can think of that actually successfully does both. Like, she was very dramatic for so long. Then she had her first two comedies with the greats, but then she started falling her stride with Death Becomes Her, and then she became like a and Postcards from the Edge was comedy drama. So she always toes that line. Del Rose Prada was kind of comedy. Like, so she's the only one I know of that I think actually has successfully done both.
Right.
In many ways, like concurrently. It's like you're right. Other folks try stuff, and you're like, that's horrible.
Right. Yeah.
Robert Williams for a while was starting to do some good dark stuff, and he was really good at them. Maybe it was a little too dark for him, clearly, but he was doing some really good work. One Hour Photos are my favorites. 1 Hour Photos are my favorites. It's so dark.
I remember as a kid, speaking of Robin Williams, my mom loved Mork and Mindy.
That was my time period. Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and she would watch that, and so I just remember like watching that show, and then as a kid, my mom, I mean, I didn't see the movie, but I remember seeing some stuff on it, hearing my mom talking about it, either to my dad or some friends. But The World According to Garp,
Yeah, that's a good one
and
too.
it was
The cow, him. I mean, just all these great.
yeah, but I remember being disturbed by it because I don't know what I saw,
Yeah.
but I was like, this doesn't. I saw this and I went, wow, this seems very serious and adult and not funny. Not the guy who came from outer space in an egg, but he did that really well. He was able to make that transition really, really well. So
I was telling
yeah.
people the other day, it's funny where someone starts or gets their first taste of stardom, and so then it becomes really popular. And for me, the 70s were my time period. I was a child of the 70s and became a teenager. It was this thing where I didn't realize the genius of some of these people until later. It was just silly fun when I was a kid. More Committee was one of those silly shows I thought was really silly.
Right.
But then later, when you realize he's doing some actually genius stuff, that a lot of it's improv, clearly, because he's just that mind. And
Right.
went on Jonathan Winters, that another comic genius, and you've seen the work that they were doing together. You're like, this is a lot smarter than I really kind of gave it credit. Like I didn't know as a kid. I mean, now I started living life. Again, I got into TV production. I started seeing like, no, they're like, some of the stuff is, some of it is silly, and some of the choices he's making, you can see his genius that came later.
Right.
Like Mrs. Doubtfire and all these other things he started doing later. It was like you can see the slapsticky stuff, but then he's making some choices that are very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You realize that later. A lot of shows I'd realized as a kid, I didn't even realize till later. The Jeffersons or Good Times, all these shows I used to watch. I mean, Norman Lear production. It was just like, as I got older, it's like, I knew about, like All in the Family and Maude were like very much the standard. But like Jeffersons and Good Times, it's like, there's some really, in Sanford and stuff, there's some really good stuff in there actually that no one really, I mean, it gets written off a little bit. And then you start seeing episodes like, oh, there's some good stuff in there.
Well, all that stuff was completely groundbreaking.
You could do it today.
I mean, all that Norman Lear stuff was completely and utterly groundbreaking. I mean, you can't do it today. You just can't. But it was amazing what they put on network television then.
I got to meet him years ago.
Oh, you did?
And I was tongue-tied. Like, it was like, because, I mean, it's stuff one day at a time. Always, I mean, all these shows, he did so many shows that were so groundbreaking that I watched and grew up on. And he actually mentored a friend of mine, Joshua Silverstein. He went to one of his shows. He was standing next to me. We were waiting for the show to start. I saw my friend, I think that's Norman Lear. He had that hat, he had that hat on that he always wears.
Yeah.
It's him. And he heard my big mouth. I got a big mouth, the deep voice. Yeah. He's like, young man with a deep voice. I heard you. I am Norman Lear. I was like, oh my God. And he started laughing. And he couldn't have been sweeter. It was sweetest.
Yeah.
But it was like, I said, I want to talk to you. I said to him, I don't even know what to say. I want to thank you just for years of service, basically, to our television sets. I mean, you just did stuff that, and he would say, he looked me in the eye and said, thank you so much for saying that. I said, no, man, I mean, it's seriously, you changed the face of television.
You sure did.
Did that.
Who thought a TV show about living in the projects in Chicago was funny?
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, what's funny about that?
Right.
I mean, but it was. I think it was also. I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing at this point. I mean, because I wasn't around for it, but I think there was a different sense among people when the stuff they were making. Like the mindset was a lot different. Like Matt, you can even say the same thing for MASH. What's funny about the Vietnam War? I know. But they made a show out of it, and it was groundbreaking.
7 seasons. They did it. I mean, top notch. I mean, there's episodes that you're just like, it stands out. I mean, comedically and dramatically, they toe the line. I used to love MASH. Like another show I really did appreciate later. Speaking of dark, I never forget, it was towards the end, and it's the famous episode where Hawkeye talks about a chicken being killed, but it was a baby on a bus, and to keep it quiet. He told the woman to keep the chicken quiet, and it was actually a baby that she killed to keep it quiet. Right. Yeah. And it was a very dramatic scene, and Alan Alda just was brilliant, and it's like, and he did that darkness but then he could do the comedic stuff like a couple beats later. And so it's like, it was just like,
Right.
it was like the craziest thing. It's like, and
Mhm.
it was a half-hour sitcom, basically. It was a half-hour show. You know, it's
Right.
like, who does it? No one does that anymore. I mean, I may say Blackish kind of does it a little bit. They touch some of the topics that are like that. But I can't think of any show right now that even goes close to touching race and class and all that kind of stuff in a half-hour form.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's a cultural thing where everybody's at this point, you can't, it's one of these, I mean, political correctness has taken on something that isn't what I think initially
Yeah.
it meant. And the same with like the term woke, which people throw around and they don't really understand like where it came from and what it originally meant. And so these things have gotten to a point where now you can't, it's really, you can't do anything. I mean, everyone's too afraid to offend somebody, that nobody's stepping out making shows like the Jeffersons, Sanford and Son. I mean, it's just not happening anymore. People are too scared. Like, oh no, you can't. People will protest or say this or that or what
On Twitter or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and they have no concept or clue what they're talking about. They just don't.
And you come from a place, because I'm from Los Angeles, but I have family in New York, so I went both times. You come from another recognizable place, Chicago.
Yeah,
Which
South
very
Side.
recognizes its own. What I mean, that's a question I could ask you. What do you think is the representation of Chicago? I love Chicago. First of all, I love going there all the time.
Yeah.
But you coming from there, what is kind of the energy of Chicago in your opinion?
Well, Chicago's interesting because it's very removed from any kind of like, entertainment of any stretch. I mean, yeah, they make stuff there now,
Yeah.
but mainly it's not, that's not anything that's like a part of the culture of Chicago. So it's very, it's, it's very blue collar. I mean, there's a lot of white collar,
Right.
jobs and things there as well. But I mean, it's just like sort of like you get a job and that's, I mean, you don't think of these things like, oh, I'm going to be a filmmaker or an actor or an artist or a musician. I mean, this is not a part of that culture there. And then at the same time, it's not in New York, which
But it's a big city. But it's a big city.
It is, but yes, and it is.
It's a big Midwest city. It's a big Midwest city.
Yeah, and so it's unto itself, and I think Chicago gets a little bit of a bad rap because they're known as the second city. Speaking of, and a lot of Chicagoans get offended by that, but because New York was there first.
It was.
Of course it was, but and I love New York. I think I really love New York. I've lived there on several occasions for good lengths of time, and I think I love it. There's an energy to that city I love. And Chicago's just unto itself. It's a lot cleaner. It's, the thing about Chicago that and look, there's racial divides everywhere, but Chicago, I feel, is unlike any city. The racial divides in Chicago are very clear.
Wow.
And that, I think, is the one thing that makes Chicago unique. And it's the one thing that Chicago celebrates as well, more than anything, too, is like all the different cultures. But I mean, it's really very divided in a way that I don't see in New York personally. Chicago's slower. It's still a city, but it's way slower than New York.
Yes.
Completely slower than New York.
Did you grow up with Black friends?
Oh yeah. I mean, coming from the South Side.
Okay.
That's where I grew up. My parents eventually moved us out to the suburbs.
It happens, of course. You get more money.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I remember like this I sometimes I tell this because it's just like I think it can perfectly describe like my upbringing, which is like my first girlfriends were Puerto Rican.
There you go. Okay, there you go.
When I when my parents moved us out to the suburbs, um, I remember the white girls with blonde hair, scared the crap out of
Oh, funny.
me.
Okay.
Very scared. I was just like, I didn't get it.
Wow.
I I didn't get it. So my first friends that I would find were Hispanic, black. Like that's who I gravitated toward because it's what I knew. So that's just what I grew up around. And that's what I knew. So for me, it was just different.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit of a different upbringing.
Yeah.
Which I loved, which I love. And I do. I have a ton of black friends and Hispanic friends, and so yeah.
Yeah, this is good. I know Chicago gets a bad rap outside. It's like this dangerous city, and especially the South Side, very dangerous, and all this kind of
It's not, well, it's not. I mean, I don't see it that way. I mean, yeah, there's a lot, but it's a lot of it's gang violence.
right.
And and they don't care about you if you're not messing with that stuff. They don't care.
That's
I
true.
mean, look, I'll tell you, I'll never forget this. I was in school. I think it was in junior high, and there were rival gangs. There were all sorts of gangs. There were we had like, what did we have? We had Latin Kings, Devil's Disciples. What else do we have in there? I haven't thought about this in a long time. But there was like 3 or 4 rival gangs within my school, and I'll never forget. It was between class breaks. I'm at my locker. Older student next to me, this big, tall, black dude. He's getting his stuff out of his locker, and out of nowhere, 3 or 4 Latino dudes who did not go to the school just ran in, and they had knives, and they stabbed this guy and ran off right next to me.
Oh my goodness.
Right next to me at my locker. And I'll never forget that. And people were screaming and
I'm sure. I'm sure.
and all this stuff. And I'm standing right there going, oh my God, I was just like, so I saw it. I mean, I grew up around it, but again, if you weren't messing with that stuff, and I mean, and I heard you the other night too. I mean, you grew up around it as well. So I mean, it's as long as you weren't,
True. It's true.
you weren't in their business. They really didn't care about you. So for me, Chicago isn't that. I
Yeah.
mean, I do say it's a racially divided city,
Right. Right.
but I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I grew up. I am very comfortable cruising around the south side of Chicago. I'm not like, just because I'm white, I'm not worried about getting like mugged or anything like that. It's just not, I don't know. I just don't have that. And I have got those wits about me. I'll tell you, the first time I moved to Los Angeles, the scaredest I've ever been was on Hollywood Boulevard at night.
Oh wow. Oh, at night.
Because the people on Hollywood Boulevard freaked me out because it wasn't the same thing. It was just desperate people who will kind of do anything to anyone and so for me, I didn't understand that, because that I didn't really ever see in Chicago. It was more about, the gangs and stuff like that. So, you knew just how to hold yourself and you would be left alone.
Yeah.
I mean, the muggings and things of that nature happen in Chicago, but I just remember being sketched out like nobody's business on Hollywood Boulevard. I was like, this is weird.
There's some strange folks at Hollywood at certain times of night. There are. I've been out at certain times of night when I shouldn't have been back in the past.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have been out, but I was, and you see things all the time.
Yeah. Right.
I used to work up there too, so I was like, oh, I used to work.
Oh, really? Where did you work?
I worked at the Hollywood YMCA, actually, which is on Selma, which is right up there.
I used to work back in the day. I worked out when I would come from Chicago. I would do pilot. I would come out for pilot season and then go back. And got a temp membership at the Hollywood YMCA. I loved it.
Yeah,
right
I loved working there. But then we had characters we had to deal with on a daily basis.
Sure.
That would just kind of wander in or be outside, and it's
right.
because it's right near the heart of Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood Boulevard's like just right over here, and Vine's right over here. And it's all near stuff. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's a little rough. Nice to walk around stuff, but that's I had my If you watch my late night show, I talk about all kinds of stuff like that on that show.
I know. It's a great show. I love your late night.
On the Sunset Strip in the 80s. I talked about that back in the day.
Oh, wow.
I saw things back then.
Well, we got to tune into the late night show for all the details.
For all those details. That's on IG at James Lott Jr. at 10 p.m. I talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, I talk about some of the things that I saw and did back in the day. Not everything, but I tell a few things for conversation. Right. It's fun. But yeah, no, I think, I just think, but Chicago's an identity, LA has their identity, New York has now Atlanta has an identity, and they're all having these identities now that, Vancouver has an identity now because all the entertainment stuff.
Yeah.
But Chicago fascinates me because it is, I have friends who call it the New York of the Midwest. It's completely like, it's a metropolitan city, beautiful buildings, bridges, rivers, all that kind of stuff, beautiful, lake, everything. I mean, all this stuff, but yet it's the Midwest.
Right.
Very Midwest. It's like, it's to me, and I love Midwest. It's very Midwest, but it's a little cosmopolitan at the same time.
It's very friendly. The thing, I remember the first time I ever went to New York and lived there was with one of my best pals, Joe Sikora, who's on the show Power, plays Tommy on Power.
You do know him? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he he's one of my best friends. I've known him since I've been like 18. And he left LA. He didn't like LA and he moved to New York, and I went and lived with him for like I was between places at this time, and he had just moved there. So I lived with him for like 8-9 months or something like that. And we lived in Little Italy. And I remember we first got there, and within like a few days, I said, Joe, man, I go, is it just me, or do New Yorkers not shut the fuck up? They talk so much. He's like, yeah, they do. Now, so I say that, and I like that too. It's cool. It's like great because you can kind of go into a bar and a New Yorker will talk at you.
Oh yeah.
Not with you, will talk at you.
Oh, yeah.
You will never be, you can always strike up a conversation. Now that's to me the difference between Chicago, because if you go sit in a bar in Chicago, it's now eventually, if you can build up enough trust with someone, they'll eventually become insanely friendly, and but there's a weird sense of Chicago, like you've almost got to be vetted. Like when you talk about, if you say you're from Chicago, like really from Chicago, like I'll have this conversation, like people, if I'll meet them other places, like, yeah, I'm from Chicago. I'm like, and then you say, where? And then what, if you're from Chicago, you're going to go, I grew up on, 12th and Roosevelt. Or, I grew up in Bronzeville at such and such. And what you do is you name cross streets. That's a very Chicago thing. It's like you name your neighborhood and your cross street, and you know exactly what they're talking about. And so I'll go, where in Chicago? Naperville. And I'm like, that ain't Chicago. That's Naperville. That's you live in Illinois.
Yeah.
Near Chicago. But you live in Naperville. Yes. I'm from Chicago.
That's hilarious.
And I've noticed that's a little difference too, like when you talk to a New Yorker. It's not that same thing. So it is very like Chicago is like there's this very like there's a closed off sense, but once you get to know someone and you get talking, it's very open and it's extremely warm. But you can't strike up a convo with a stranger in Chicago the way you can in New York, which is a really cool thing about New York. You can kind of be like, hey, how you doing? Hey, great, come on, sit over here. Chicago different. Eventually that can happen, but it's going to take a little longer. So there's two different mentalities, and I heard it best put in the way describing a New York gangster and a Chicago gangster, which was that the John Gottis and stuff, they like to be out in public and get their picture taken and wear the nice suits. And a Chicagoan and a gangster from Chicago would never even allow his picture to be taken. So there's a little bit of that mentality,
Yeah.
I think, in a Chicagoan versus a New Yorker. Anyway.
Well, you know, in New York, especially, New York, it's all about your neighbor, your borough, and then your neighborhood.
Mhm.
Where are you
Right.
from? I'm from Fort Hamilton Parkway in Brooklyn. Like, that's what you would say that. I'm from
Mhm.
the Upper West Side in Manhattan. Like, that's where you don't really
Mhm.
name streets across. You don't really do that.
Right.
And
Right.
LA, same thing. I'm from Los Angeles, where I'm from Inglewood. Like, you would say your city.
Right.
I'm from
Right.
Manhattan Beach. You may say LA at first because it kind of encompasses everything, but you know, when I was living in Northern California, they thought LA was Santa Barbara South. It's like, no, there's like LA starts after the hills from the valley. That's
Right.
and then it stops where you get to Long Beach. Like, this is LA. Then there's Orange County. Like, they don't understand the sections down here. It's like
Right.
Valley, LA, Orange County, you know, the Riverside. Like, there's all these different areas. Like, they say LA is everything. Southern California, like, all Southern California is in Los Angeles.
Right.
But coming from folks from New York, it was always about I'm from Dumbo in Brooklyn, or I'm from Harlem, or I'm from Spanish Harlem, you know, Manhattan. Like, it was always about the area and the borough.
Right.
That's what that's
Right.
what
Absolutely.
so it's interesting about the whole cross streets thing. You don't. I mean, nobody says that. And it's funny when I was in. Just a side note, just that I was thinking about this. When I was in Dallas, whenever I go to my cousins in Dallas, my sister, I always say I'm going to the 405 or the 110. They don't say the.
Right.
California. Just say 39. 91.
It's funny. It's funny if you really want to like piss off a Chicagoan, you know, say when you're talking about driving on the freeway.
Oh yeah, you'll say
that'll piss off a Chicagoan because ain't no highway free there. It's called a tollway.
Exactly. That's right. That's right.
I was driving from I shot a movie this last summer that I directed in New York, and I flew to Chicago, and I met my director of photography because he lives in LA, and he just wanted to personally do a road trip for himself before he got to New York. So he drove, and I was there, and he met me in Chicago, and we hopped in, and we finished the rest of the way to New York. And he was so angry because he's like, we got out of Chicago. He's like, what the fuck? How much money does it cost to drive? I mean, every day he's like $7, $8, you know, and then we would get into Ohio. And then it just got worse.
Oh yeah.
And worse and worse. And he was like, what is the fucking deal with all these? So yeah, it's the same thing. It's like you either say highway or tollway. If you say freeway, people just look at you sideways like, not no freeways going on.
Exactly. I always thought about that too because I travel. I've got my older place, but when I kept saying you're going on the 39, he goes, nobody says that, James, in Texas.
Right.
39. We're going on 39.
Right. Yeah.
Well, 39. But I'm used to saying that in LA. It's like the 110 to 105 to the 405. Yep. I'm used to saying that. They're like, we don't say that. They just laugh when I say it. We don't say that. We don't, you don't go on the 70.
Well, and that's the one difference of LA. LA was built to be, I mean, it was the place, I mean, initially anyway, I mean, they didn't plan for the influx of people that are here now, but it was supposed to be, you could get anywhere in 5 or 10 minutes. You could hop on the 110 or 10 or 405 or 101, and you could get to the beach in 10 minutes. Or you could get, and it was that way for a while, way before I was ever here. Now you can't. Now it's a parking lot. But that was the idea. I mean, it was to be the first city where it was just all freeways, and you could zip around.
Well, the thing was, LA was like, the old joke is you can get somewhere in 20 minutes. I can be there in 20 minutes. Without traffic, literally, you can't get places.
You can. Now you can.
You can now.
If you hop on the road and drive, now you can actually get to places in the amount of time. You can, if something's 13 miles away, you'll be there in 13 minutes.
Yeah, folks don't understand when I tell people that. I go, I said, like AfterBuzz TV, which, is out there. Mm-hmm. I said, that one is literally, it's 25 miles away from me. But I said, but by freeway, I could literally get there in a half an hour. Like from my house, from door to door, and
Right.
no major traffic. It could be a half hour. And
Right.
I go, yeah. But I said, but normally it's an hour and a half, 2 hours we do. I mean, like,
Right.
it's like because there's traffic. But I said, I've gotten home late from AfterBuzz, and there was like straight on the freeway, no traffic, and I
Right.
was home in 30 minutes. And I was like,
Yep.
it can happen.
Yes.
It's that it normally doesn't because it's a little crowded. All these cars everywhere.
Yeah, a little crowded. Boy, oh
A
boy.
little crowded.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that LA is where dreams, are people trying to find their dreams, the
Yeah.
weather,
Yeah.
the beaches. I mean, I get all that, but it's
Right.
crowded, folks. It is crowded.
Completely crowded.
It
In a
is.
way that it wasn't like when I was coming out here for my pilot seasons, that was like 2000, 2001. That's kind of when it all started. And I remember thinking it was crowded then. Now it's like, oh my God, it's crazy.
Every square inch, and they're building everywhere. And I just remember I got here 11 years ago. I came back home, and I'm like, it wasn't that bad 11 years ago.
Right.
And now I'm like, okay, I'm seeing lots of people. And now, of course, everybody's off the streets. But before the virus thing happened, there was a lot, just the parking situation in LA.
Right. Right.
It makes me laugh because it's so bad. It's just like, people ask you, so I want to meet over here. Is there parking? That's like the first question. Is there parking?
Yeah. I just know that whenever I have an appointment that I have to take and it's on the west side, West Hollywood or Santa Monica, I immediately just get anxious because I'm thinking to myself, I've got to find parking. I've got to I got to make sure I got $20 to drop on just parking in a lot somewhere because I don't even want to mess around with the ticket. I mean, and then you get there and there's 39 signs stacked on top of each other, all saying something. I mean, you got to stand there for an hour.
Oh, I know.
Get these things and go, now, wait a second. No parking Tuesday. What day is it? Okay. And then the next one says something about Wednesday. The next something says about Thursday. It's going like, what the?
And not just that, though. It's also like, okay, no parking Wednesday from 8 to 9 a.m., but no parking Thursday from 6 to 6, but you can park on this. I'm like, oh my God.
I know.
I got told once because I read it wrong. I mean, literally, I stood there and I tried my best, and I missed this one, so I didn't get it, I guess. And I'm eating at Kitchen 24, having a good old time. We came outside, let me park the car right here. Like, where'd the car go?
Oh no!
They go to detail. $400 the car out, of course. I mean, it was like, but seriously, there was like 5. I mean, it was seriously. You go online, folks. There's a million pictures about how there's like a billion signs.
No, it's not cool. It's completely
asinine.
It's
That's my word for it. Yes, exactly. Well, thanks for coming on my show. Thanks
for having me, James. Well, I hope that I mean, check the movie out.
Tell people where they can find it. Tell them, name the movie and where they can find it.
So, High and Outside, a baseball noir, and you can find it on Amazon, streaming right now on Prime, and on demand. Just dial it up, and check it out, watch it. I mean, it's a little indie, and
while you're there, rate it, comment. If you don't want to comment, at least rate it.
Yeah, I mean, on Amazon, if you buy it, it helps us if you can rate it and then write a comment. And it doesn't even have to be a huge comment. If you liked it, you just write great. It helps the film a lot, and it needs the love. It's a little indie, but it's a really solid, well done film. So if you're looking just
art is important. Art is important.
Art is very, very important. So I hope I get to see you in person again, James.
I know. I know. It's crazy.
It's too bad. It's too bad you didn't make it out to the Corey Feldman thing.
I know.
Because that was literally like, when I look back on that, and I was even thinking of not going, but I was like, I've got to go support, Sammy, she's my girl. So I'm like, I got to go support her. But there was a little part of me that was like, but I'm happy I went, because that was literally, I think, maybe one of the last sort of red carpets this town saw.
I know.
And it was a night out. Like I went with a couple buddies of mine. It was a night out. We went out, went to the
I had planned to go, and I was working. And sometimes when you're on set longer than you're supposed to, you know how that happens. And so I sent 2 friends to my place. They went and they saw the whole.
Oh, that thing was crazy with a capital K.
Yes,
whoa. And true, but you can't expect anything. And I like Corey. He's a nice dude. He's a very nice, wonderful man. But for whatever reason, look, drama just follows this dude.
Yes.
I don't know if he's creating it. I have no clue. But all I know is if it's a Corey Feldman thing, no, it's going to get crazy. And of course, I walked in not thinking that, but holy cow.
No, see, I knew possibly that was going to happen. So, and again, Corey's been on my show on AfterBuzz TV.
Right.
We've sat down. I like Corey a lot. I've been a couple of his things. I've been a couple of his functions over the years. I like Corey. He's a super nice, earnest guy. But yeah, I had a feeling something was going to go down somewhere. And I was that's why I kind of wanted to go for the tea. Go and see what was going to happen. But I do a lot of things. Folks, you guys know me. I do a lot of things. So
yeah, you do. You do.
Busy doing something. I was so pissed it ran so late. I was like, I want to go. And support our girl, of course. I always want to support her. But I was hoping to be there. I was going to see you. I was going to be there. But there was
it was a lot of fun. Sammy ran a great show on that. It was well put together. And it was just the craziest people were there too. Like, I mean, just in the way that like the people I saw in the audience, I'm like, what is this? You never would have expected the eclectic mix of people who were there. Like I saw Chris Kattan. I'm like, what's he doing here? That's weird.
Why not? Well, why not?
I guess so. I'm just
exactly. Why the hell not?
Weird.
Yeah,
why is Chris Kattan there? But I look back anyway. All to say, it's like I look back on that. I'm like, oh God, that seems like worlds ago.
Yes, they're just like worlds
now that everyone's trapped at home. So I hope to be in studio with you.
Yes, I love you, my friend. You know that.
Yeah, ditto. I love you too, man. And I really appreciate all your support.
You have it always, and follow him at Phil Donlon everywhere. So that's it. Just follow him there. You can follow him at those things. And with me, where can you find me? We're all James Lott Jr. is sold at James Lott Jr. on all social media platforms.
Absolutely. And I'll be seeing you at 10 o'clock at some point this week. Tune back in. So
yes, you guys, IG Live. I come on James Lott Jr. Just follow me there. You'll get a notification. You follow me, you'll get a notification that I'm on, or you just go on there and I'll be at the top. We have all the ones. So keep scrolling down. Keep going to the left because the right. You go to the left, and I'll pop up. And who knows what I'll be talking about? Who even knows? But
that's what I love about your show. That's what I love about it. You're just chilling on the couch. You've got some kind of mixed drink or something. I don't know what it is, but I know alcohol's in it.
Yes. Oh, of course.
And you're just chilling and you're just talking and it's great. And you're really the thing that I like about. I do want to point this out. The thing I like about your show is you really take the time to read the comments and you really engage the audience really well with it. So it's not just you like rambling and it could be with anybody. You're really attentive to like what people. It's great. It's a nice sort of warm blanket to pull over yourself at 10 o'clock.
That's what I wanted. So I'm glad it came across. That's kind of what I wanted. People late at night, you're laying around. It's late. It's quiet outside. Cool. Let's just talk and chill, and then you can go to sleep or watch your late night TV afterwards.
Sure, absolutely.
Life goes on. But everybody stay safe and sane.